Yeah, sure. Please go
This
ahead.
conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, all participants. I'm Vinod from CII. I welcome you all to the webinar on demystifying data science today. We have with us our faculty, Mr. Venkatesh Umashankar, who is a machine learning researcher and data science expert from Ericsson. So he would be the faculty for this webinar, and he will be taking us through the webinar. Mr. Venkatesh has strong product development, programming, and engineering as his background, and he has practical expertise in developing machine learning applications across several sectors. And he is also experienced in performing academic literature survey and converting them into working solutions. And he has built a high performance team in this area as a part of his Ericsson, his research actually. So I would like to welcome Mr. Venkatesh to the session, and I would like to invite him to start this presentation. Mr. Venkatesh, over to you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Vinod. Yeah, thanks for the introduction. So, a quick introduction or about me would be in a single line. I'm applied ML researcher, and I have experience building high performance team in startups mainly by leveraging data and helping companies leverage their data and generating insights out of them. So today we'll see uh, the session is going to be on demystifying data science. So this session, the agenda is going to be like we're going to help you understand some of the key terminologies in data science, and then what it really means, how does industry operate, and what are the different types of people that you need in your team, and how do you see your ROI, how do you grow, how do you leverage data. These are the key takeaway points that you would get out of this session today. And in case of any questions, feel free to ask, and I'll try my best to answer. So let's get started right away. So data science is a buzzword in today's world. Everybody wants to get into data science, and then everybody wants to leverage their data. But is this new? Data has been around for a long time, and we've been using data warehousing and all those things. And what is this data science? Data science is a interdisciplinary field which has come up recently by combination of various scientific processes, algorithms, and methods. But the key goal remains the same. We want to extract knowledge and get insights from data that we already have got about our manufacturing process or business or anything per se. We have data, and we want to leverage that data to understand the process better. And data science is something that helps us to do that. Well, to explain this in layman terms, what does it mean? Usually, data doesn't by itself, give you any insights. You also need to combine it with domain expertise, because the domain expertise is what helps you understand what really the data means. And algorithms. These are the algorithms that we call as machine learning algorithms, or or any sort of computing algorithms even. And combining all these things, what we get is insights. Insights are something that we could leverage to optimize our planning, optimize our business process, or correct some mistakes that we have been doing in the past. Data products. Data products are software products, or any product in general that leverages the insights from data in the design process. Automation, optimization. You may want to automate some business processes when you combine all these things. It could be as simple as let's say when a person is coming and commenting on your social media web page that something is not working. If you can figure out what is not working, and which product is he complaining about and what is not working, if you could route it to the right person right away without having multiple channels in between, that saves you time and money. That could be an example for automation and optimization. And combining all these things, end of day, you should be able to generate business value. because anything that doesn't give us business value is really an expense without any return of investment. So we'll define intelligent systems here. What are intelligent systems? Any system that can perform operations that is normally performed by human is considered intelligent. This is a very simple definition, and we'll see various tasks of intelligence here that are currently getting popular in the data science field. Sensing is with IoT and other stuff. We are finding different types of sensors. Say for example, to measure distance, you could use a combination of accelerometer and gyroscope and stuff like that, but this is not directly measuring distance. So a mathematical model sits behind that converts something that it measures into something that you want, which is kind of a virtual sensor. So there's some sort of intelligence that has to go into this. Language understanding. This is an example that I just explained. We are generating a lot of text that the human race has never generated so far, and we also obviously are not going to get more time to understand all these things, be it literature, be it news, or be it blogs or anything. There is the amount of content that is available around us is growing exponentially every day, but the time is something that remains the same. So we really need help from machines to understand the language and then recommend us or give us exactly what we are looking for. And the sole reason why Google is popular is because it understands our keywords and search terms better than anyone else. Learning, planning, problem solving, knowledge inference, and decision making. These are key stuff which are part of any manufacturing process or stuff like that. You have to understand how to plan a manufacturing process, and if there are any gaps in it, how do I address it, how do I optimize it, and where there is a specific problem, how do I solve it with the help of a computer and not the human. And in many cases, when you have to do all these things, we also need to have the metadata corresponding to all these things stored somewhere, so that we can understand what's going on, or the machine can understand what's going on. That's what we call as knowledge base. Knowledge base is something that tries to capture the domain knowledge in an actionable form. Decision making is all about taking decisions given the current context. Language generation, again, as the amount of content is increasing, the same way, like, we also want to generate content which are more meaningful. Say for example, we want to generate content automatically given a product description or a product image or something like that. And even people are even more going advanced in a way, like, people like Disney and Pixar Studios are investing in creative story writing, which are stories written by machines that could be improved and then that could be used for plots in their movies. This is opening up a whole new world there, assisting in creative process. Even people like Photoshop and other storyboard softwares are trying to bring in these things into their softwares. So as a creator, you typically don't have to feel restricted from where you start. You can ask a machine to generate any choices, and then you can work with a machine, collaborate with the machine to create a content. Control and robotics is going to be useful in manufacturing domain mainly. So these are the several areas of intelligence where data science is being applied today. Today's, if you speak to any of the high level guys in a company, be it an enterprise, be it a startup, and something that you would hear is, they would say that they need a AI strategy or ML strategy, data science strategy, and they'll also understand that their engineers or people who work at ground level they really want to get their hands dirty with applying data science based techniques or ML based techniques in their day-to-day work to make their life easier. And marketing wants to include smartness or AI in their product descriptions. Even if you sell a sensor, they want to say it's a smart sensor and it can do something on its own, it is using AI, because that's a trend today, and marketers believe that's what is helping them sell products. And whoever is building the product, they are afraid that if I am not adapting these things, or if I am not accepting these new trends, I'm falling behind. And everyone is pitching you several products in the ML space, like you could use Azure ML, you could use AWS SageMaker, or you could use IBM Watson. So everybody is pitching you some new products that you really don't know whether you want or not. So that's how the situation is today. So let's recap a bit and then see what has really changed. This is some fundamental reflection that we have to do to understand where we are heading. So data warehousing has been around for some time, and what really has changed? Like, what is data warehousing and what really has changed today? So data warehousing used to be a place where you keep all your data. So as the name says, it's a warehouse, right? So you do all your business process. The transactional systems were actually capturing your orders and day-to-day activities, operations, but you really wanted some summary of the transactions that you could refer quickly, and you want it to be integrated with several operational systems, so you can see the source of truth in a single system. And you wanted it to be time invariant, which means irrespective of when you go and take a look at it, it should show you the right figure and the same figure, and the data should be available always. So this was the need for a data warehouse. Pretty simple, right? However, what it does not provide, it only stores data. It really does not provide any automatic discovery of patterns, or unless you really go pick out the data from there and analyze it. And what's coming next, that's also not available. And what should I do with this data? It doesn't say anything about that. Okay, wait, we had some promises that BI, business intelligence, is exactly doing some of this, right? So what is this data science? That's the next question I keep getting in many places. So business intelligence is something that helps you summarize this data that sits in the data warehouse, to put it in a simpler way. Because as a humans, we cannot actually digest so much of information. So we need some way or a different language to understand this data, and that's the purpose of BI actually. So it allows you to see the big picture. It gives you some sort of reports that you could share with the management, and it helps you look backward, what has happened in the past, how is the trend changing, whether it is going up or down, and it doesn't give anything more than that. It doesn't say answer your questions right. It doesn't answer questions like what really happened there. So things really started going down, and what should I need to do to bring the revenue up again? So these kind of questions are really not answered by BI as well. Though some of these are attempted, they're really not answered in a full-fledged manner. And that is where data science is coming up. People realize, the term data science itself is coined because people realize that we've been just building the foundations with data warehousing and BI, but the real cake sits, and we've not even opened up the icing. Hence the term data science. It's a combination of several areas, and today these are the areas that you see here are heavily influenced by application of data science. So evidence-based reasoning. So when you have something, the data that has happened, and you want to understand some reasoning behind like why it happened. Recommendation systems. We all know, like we all buy online, and we all know how these recommendations are getting better and better and better, so that they keep us from make us buying, or keep us stick to these sites. NLG, we just discussed, natural language generation. And you would also have seen the trend that most of the websites have moved to chat-based support. So people have realized that text-based chat support is actually giving a lot of bandwidth to them rather than phone calls, or because in a phone call you could attend only one person at a time, whereas in a chat you could parallelly attend multiple customers. So chatbots, in addition to this, chatbots can also help the support person to answer repeated questions, like where do I find this information, how do I renew my account, or how do I recharge my account, or where do I find this option. These kind of questions are repeated questions which the chatbot figures out itself and then answers the customer. So the support executive is freed off, and there is a collaboration between machine and human here again. RPA, robotic process automation, is again something that is catching up today in the field of automation. This is about automating your business processes, business flows, workflows, and stuff like that. And machine learning is also, data science and machine learning is also playing a key role there. Text analysis, we discussed a bit of it already, and machine learning is in general applicable in many areas. So it's a generic term that you'll see in data science problems. So are we good so far? Any questions? Nothing? Okay. Let's move on. What makes a data science team? Yeah, any questions? Okay. Okay. So what makes a data science team? A data science team is a team that comprises mainly data engineers, data scientists, and subject matter experts, and also some software engineers like UI and web application developers and so on. So we'll get into the detail of each of these boxes, and then we'll try to understand why we need these persons in the team. So as the term data science is an interdisciplinary term, the same applies to the team as well. The team is also interdisciplinary. It doesn't have people who have only one specific skill, like front end development or back end database development or something like that. So they have a mixture of skills. Who are these members? The data engineering part of the data science are dealt by data engineers. So these people have been traditionally called ETL developers, extraction, transformation, loading developers, in the data warehousing world. But ETL is not enough in data science. There is much more things that we need in extra, which we'll see shortly. So the term has evolved from ETL developer to data engineer. Data scientist. So this is a person who understands a broad picture of data science, who can use data and help business with some insights and predictions and stuff like that. Full stack developers. So any insight that you generate renders useless if you cannot present it in a useful way, or if you cannot integrate it with an existing system and so on. That's why you need full stack developers in a data science team. SMEs. These are also called product managers, and they form a key part of data science team. So if you call data scientists one eye, probably I would call SMEs the other eye, and the others are sensors which support these two eyes. Data engineer, does he only do ETL? So the industry has shifted now from drag and drop tools towards more of a programmatic approach. In the earlier days, people used to have ETL tools like Informatica, Talent, and stuff, and tools like that which they heavily use for data transformation. They're still in use, they're not dead, they're quite popular in fact. But they're not sufficient in today's world, because the data that comes in is the size of the data volume that comes in is has enormously increased, and also the types of data that they process has changed. And we've been processing data in files, batches, and now the expectation is we need to process the data real time, more or less in a streaming fashion. So these are the challenges that today's world give to us. So most of us would have watched Hotstar, have used Hotstar app to cricket match for watching cricket match. They have a social feature. If you've used, you'd see that when a match is happening, one of your friend could comment, and then you could see the comment immediately, and then the social interactions happen right away, and they are shared corresponding to each of these. Excuse me. Sorry, that was a phone call. I'm back. So you'd see that these social interactions are almost shown to you real time as the match happens, and they also capture several metrics what do you interact in the website, the web analytics. I mean, they capture several metrics as to what are the things that you interact in the app and what feature you use and so on. So these are captured as real-time events, and they are processed in almost near real time. So the reason behind this is, let's say, if there is a drop in viewership, you want to know immediately so that you can fix the problem immediately. You cannot fix it tomorrow. The match is happening right now, and if your viewership is going down by 10 lakh suddenly, the problem is in the system right now, and you have to fix it right now. You cannot wait until tomorrow. So that's how that's an example of how world has changed, and why you need these skills, or why you need to process data real time to be able to adapt to today's demands. And these demands are currently met by having a good software engineering skill, and also having a comfort working with various open source platforms, being adaptable to constantly learn new things, and employ a variety of tools and techniques and marry them together to build systems that you need. So ETL engineer who used to be a traditional drag and drop guy is no more good enough today, and you have to be almost a good software engineer to be able to give reasonable insights, or give reasonable data processing abilities. And why does the data science team need a full stack developer? And the main reason, as I said earlier, is you want to productionize stuff that you are doing in data science. A prototype is something that you build quick and dirty to understand the ROI and the value of investment, but it cannot be integrated right away into a production systems. Let's say you build a data science model or a prediction model which predicts the forecast, or predicts or forecast your product demand for the next few weeks. And if this cannot be integrated with your ERP, then the insights are almost like useless. You should be able to integrate it with your ERP so that you can plan accordingly, your sourcing accordingly. So that's why it is important to have a full stack developer in your data science team who has very good software engineering skills, and it's important to bring in a good software engineering culture in a data science team from day one. Otherwise, you would just end up having business analysts who can speak good things, who can give you nice presentations, but taking them or putting them into action is another whole new thing of it's a different thing, sort of challenge. And again, data scientist is something that is a very term that's very much abused in the industry today. Many people would call them data scientists. So as a company, if I want to hire a data scientist, how do I know if he's a good data scientist? What are the things that I should look for, and so on? So this slide mainly focuses on answering that question. What are the different types of data scientists available in the market, and how do I identify them? And what kind of data scientist do I need in my team? Having an understanding of this helps you build your data science team in a good way and grow as your demands change. It can help you to be more flexible, and it can help you save a lot of costs, of course. Type A, this type A, type B, type C that I have put here is something that I have classified. This is not an industry standardized term, but it should help you understand the big picture overall. Type A guy is somebody who has a high level understanding of a domain, and he uses ready-made tools instead of coding and then building algorithms. Say for example, he could be a domain expert who is actually having a good understanding, who has built or learned ML, AI and data science, and he's trying to put his domain knowledge into action. He does not have experience in building high quality software or building software products, but he has a good idea about domain. He can build insights, and then he can focus on understanding the business better. So he is a kind of product manager guy who understands the big picture of the business, and who understands how to use tools, and who can also use some ready-made tools by using some hacks to figure out whether an approach will work or not. Type B. So type B guys are somebody who has a formal rigorous background in data science. They have studied the foundation academically, and they also have good hands-on experience in software development, and they are guys who can help you build a minimal viable prototype end to end, starting from where the data starts and where it has to generate insight. So these are guys who are doing stuff end to end, but they may have limited domain experience, but they will come with strong data science background and strong software engineering skills. Type C, these are unicorns, I would say. They would have a very deep understanding of data science algorithms, which they would have built over time by either spending time in academia or industry, by working on a variety of data science problems across various domains. And they also have a very good hands-on experience in building software products. So this picture, this is a story probably all of us would have heard as a kid. This very much explains the situation why we need domain experts. See, irrespective of what type of data scientists you have, they're all blind when it comes to domain. A business user or somebody who runs the business on day-to-day basis, they will not be able to match the domain knowledge of those functional persons or a business user. So these business users are somebody who would call as domain experts or SMEs, and they are experts. They've gained the expertise both by education and by gaining significant experience in a particular domain. So they are key persons or key ingredient of a data science team. Without them, the data scientists, each of them would infer something based on the limited visibility that they get from the data. Because we are not capturing all data, irrespective of the opportunities that we have to capture data everywhere. It's also expensive, and it's also time consuming, and it's also not realistic to process, feasible to process all the data in real time. So of course, like, we capture data whatever we could, and these data will give you only a window of visibility if you don't have the big picture of the domain. So they will give you a window in which you can look into what happened in the context of that data, but only a domain expert would have a broad picture, and only he would be able to say when you observe some sort of anomalies in the data, only he would be a person who can give you a reasonable answer. And any framework of data science project should have domain experts in them to get reasonable insights. And the domain experts can also learn pick up data science, and then they can pick up high level ideas from data science, and then they can also become a type A data scientist, which is pretty much happening in today's world. And in addition to all these types of guys that we have seen so far, there's also cutting edge research that happens today in the field of ML and AI. So one surprising fact that I could say is ML, AI, and data science is progressing in a rapid pace, which no other field of science has progressed so far. So we have probably 100 academic papers or 100,000 papers coming out every day, and the number of publications in each of these conferences are just skyrocketing every year. And we literally don't have enough time to go through all these publications and then pick up something that's useful for us. So this is from the perspective how people are really pushing it hard to move the state of art from one level to other level. Say for example, deep learning, reinforcement learning, and all these things are really making a difference in our worlds today. These technologies are coming into commodities. Say for example, cameras can do visual recognition today, and machines can learn to do things on their own by trial and error. So these are only possible due to cutting edge research. These researchers should not be in hurry here in your team. Let's say when you have set up a data science team and you have realized the value that you can get out of your data, you have already tasted some fruits of it, but you really want more. You feel there is more potential, and you really need to use then state of art techniques to get some more juice out of where you stand. And also you want to push the boundaries of what's possible in your domain or in your area. That's when you should hire a researcher, and that's when you should try to use state of art solutions. So any questions here so far? Okay, no? Okay, I will move ahead. So we've seen different types of people. Yeah, please go ahead.
So in general, what is your recommended ways when you say someone who is not so much experienced in the data science, he knows a bit of algorithms, say like a type C, how would he, how can he move to a field where, how can he build his portfolio, or how can he develop his
So your
skills in this?
type C is an
data
expert, Karthik. Like,
knowledge or
are you speaking about type A? Type C is a kind of expert who has a very good understanding of
yes, yes.
Okay. See,
Sorry, yeah. Type A is
it may not be necessary for type A to move to type C always, because type A has its own advantages which type C will never be able to acquire. See, type A should actually try to become a product manager and not try to become a type C person, because type A are people who typically are domain experts typically, and domain experts usually have a very good understanding of domain. And if they also understand the machine learning and data science techniques at a high level, and if they could also realize some of these things, how they work, then they will be able to give better inputs to the type B and type C guys. Okay, in fact, like type A guys are of high demand, because type C and type B can be brought in by formal education. Type C guy can be a guy who did his PhD in ML, and type B can be a guy who is just fresh out of his college after his masters and who has 3 or 4 years of software development experience. Whereas type A, he should be a seasoned guy in the industry, he should have a domain expertise, and on top of this he should have invested time to also learn data science. So type A guys are really hard to find, and they should not actually try to become type B or type C. Of course it's not something that stops you from doing it. So type A is something that should evolve into a product manager who has understanding of big picture and then can guide type B and type C. And Harishankar, I think the answers to some of your questions are coming in the next slides. Answers to your question about proportion is coming next. So we'll see how do I build a team for a startup and how do I build a team for an enterprise. That should answer this question also, Harishankar. See, we always know that building a startup is very different from building an enterprise or building a team within an enterprise. Because as a startup, one has to operate with several limitations with respect to funding and with respect to all resources, not just funding, right? So you just cannot go and hire what you want, and you really have to plan what you want exactly. And one misstep in miscalculation, you're going to burn the fingers, and it might affect your future prospects. So how should I build a team for a startup? So in a very founding stage, right, we should have only very limited number of employees. So obviously in a startup we're going to have very limited employees, and as a founder or CEO or whoever is building, he should actually become a type A data scientist. He should not just be a guy who is actually hiring persons. That is the best thing that can happen for a startup. So you become a type A data scientist, you understand what ML and AI and data science techniques are going to be helpful for your product. So you become the first member of your data science team, and then you could bring in one type B guy. These type B guys can be freshers or somebody who is fresh out of college or who has 2 years of experience in software development and who have done some MOOCs, massive online courses in MLAI, and they want to get into MLAI and they are looking for these opportunities. So you can find if these guys are good or not only when you become a type A data scientist. So you have to first upskill yourself, and then you can start with just having a couple of type B data scientists. This can be just a team of 3 to start with, and before you do all this you should also have some product and which generates data, right? So that's a key requirement for building a data science team. So if many startups also fail because they build data science teams even before they have products completed, and the data scientists get frustrated that they don't have data and they leave, or the startup burns the money by the time that they have data and they struggle to have the product ready. They have already burned their money and they don't have any more money to spend on the data science. So when you start building your data science is also when you start having some reasonable data. Once your early adaptation of the product has started, or at least based on some trial runs you have started gathering some data, that's when you should actually even think about having a data science team. So what do I do till then? So you could have some of your software developers, you could use them as type B data scientists. If you hire it properly, you could use them for both the product development as well as data science. In this case, the data science should be something that's imbibed into your product development, and it's not a separate track that runs. That's how you have to manage it. And once you have these couple of type B data scientists, and once you have validated the ideas, now you have few areas that you have tried and you know some use cases that will benefit by using these data scientists or by using data science in your product. Now it's time to put them into production, or now it's time to even make them, improve them further. Maybe you are in a position that you are happy with results and you want to operationalize it, or you will also be in a situation where everything makes sense when you apply common sense, but the program doesn't work, or the prediction model does not work that you expect, or the results are not like what you expect, but the common sense says that it should work. That's when you really need some expert help. You could try to get some expert help through academic collaborations or by getting some consultants. Still, you should not go ahead and hire type C data scientists. You should try to get some help from academic collaboration, like say for example with IITs or with some any reputed institutions in your area where people are working in this area who could take a look and then give you insights. But this is a typically slow, and they are not on top of software practices, and this is typically slow. Other option is to get a couple of expert freelance data scientists and then help you with rectifying the problems that you have in your model and take their opinion whether it's going to work or not. Once you have done it, you should have something that's ready to operationalize. You should try to go ahead and operationalize with the help of type B data scientist itself. Again, you don't need type C here. You can see this should easily help you get the first taste of fruit from applying data science in your product. Once you have tasted first few fruits, then automatically you will understand that what is the ROI that you can get out of this. That's when you should go ahead and expand your team by adding more type C data scientists who can look into this from a future perspective, or improve the existing algorithms to make it even more optimal. That's when you should go ahead and hire type C. So typically you should stay with type B data scientists until you are in early stage. When you go to mid stage and growth stage, it's time to think about type C data scientists, and also setting up a research when you are in growth stage probably. But even I would say like that's only required if you identify that you need to get at cutting edge research. Otherwise type C should be sufficient. And building a team in enterprise, this is totally different from startup. See, you have all the resources, and then you need to ramp up quickly. That's your goal typically. Say I want to use ML and AI in this product within the next 3 months, and you have this budget. You can hire 200 people, or you can hire internally, but this is when we want to get this done. That's how the targets come in an enterprise, big enterprise typically. So how do you do this then? These are the points that I have highlighted that has worked for me. What is the minimum period? Minimum period for? Can you be a bit more clear with your question, Mahendra? So continuing with getting growth stage, it depends upon the startup to startup. Some startups may take few months, and some startups may take even years, but it is typically somewhere between 3 to 5 years, I would say, if at all a startup manages to survive and then get there, which we all know that the percentage of getting there is less than 2% or even lesser than that. Coming back to building a team for enterprise, getting a sign-off from all levels of management is a key thing. See, in enterprise, the key challenge comes where like people would say like, yeah, I want to get this done, but then once you start doing this, you will start realizing that there are artificial limitations that are put by the process in place. Say for example, you may have all the budget to hire 200 people, but then there may be a bottleneck in getting hiring approvals, because when you make hiring approvals, when you make a hiring with certain CTC, you need to get approval from your VP. So this kind of process would be there, where that would actually block your progress very easily. So you need to get a strong commitment and sign off from all levels of management. And building the right foundations, this is also very important. One thing that I've realized that was worked for me in an enterprise setup is, see, you already have a lot of very good software developers who understand the domain very well, because they have been working in the company for many years, and they are also continuous learners who have invested in learning some data science. So these guys are just sitting inside your company, and these are the first guys you should be hiring in your team when you're building a data science team in your enterprise. These are the first guys who should hire. And in the context of a startup, the analogy would be these are the type B guys who get in a startup. These guys are accessible inside, and these guys you can hire easily, and these are the guys you should first go after to set up at least 20% of your team, because they can quickly help you realize whether data can be leveraged or not. But to drive them, you need somebody who is at type C level or even better than that. So you can hire them, but to drive them, to drive these internal hires, to steer them in the right direction, you need a type C guy, or even a guy who is better than that, a type A guy who can also be a type C at times. So to summarize, internal hiring is a key strategy when you want to build a team in an enterprise, and you also need to get sign-offs from all management levels. And who should lead a data science team? This is a typical structure that you would see in an organization, and today CAO, Chief Analytics Officer, is a term that's being used, or Director Data Science, that is the title that being used for people who are leaders in this space. So this is a guy who is anchoring the progress, or who is actually speaking to CMO, CEO and CTO, all these guys, who is anchoring the progress in data science with all these other guys. And he should have data science skills, he should have programming skills, you should also have a domain expertise, and he should be a visionary who understands what kind of data science problems are possible to solve in this space down the line in a year or two, or where should the company be heading in next year or 2 years to be able to make a difference with the competitors in the data science space or leveraging data. So we are now going to head into a couple of use cases, and I can take some questions before that if you have any. Okay, I'll move ahead. So Spotify is a music streaming app, probably all of us know, and they are also in India now. So we are going to discuss few use cases where how people have built data science teams in their organizations and what worked for them, and what so that these use cases are more or less learnings that we get from experiences. So Spotify went with the center of excellence model. So it built Spotify has various products, like various teams across its organizations, teams which take care of the app, teams which take care of the back end and marketing, and team which take care of the content and so on. So each of these teams need not necessarily have the data science team of their own. So they started a center of excellence team where they put a common pool of data scientists, and these data scientists are more or less internal consultants to various teams within the organization. They help various teams across the organization, and their success is defined by the team which uses them. This is how they got started, and gradually they started spreading into these product teams. Over a period of time, knowledge started spreading from the center of excellence team to the product teams. So product teams were able to pick up and do things of their own. The low hanging fruits were done by product teams itself over a period of time, and only the complex things where they needed support started coming to the COE team. The CEO team provided support in terms of not only people, it also provided the infrastructure that is needed for performing data analysis, data processing, and data science, model learning, and stuff like that. So we have a question: what is the advantage of creating a in-house versus outsourcing the entire function? See, if you do it in-house, you really, this is exactly the same as, what's the advantage of cooking at home rather than cooking yourself than buying from hotel, right? So there's nothing different here. So when you're outsourcing, there is only typical, there is only, you can get it to a certain level, and it also comes with costs. There's a lot of time spent in communication because you are also outsourcing the knowledge about your business process and all those things. You are actually giving it to the outside person, so you are not retaining that person who is building that knowledge within your organization, which is a key asset. This could be a type A data scientist who you are working with, who you are outsourcing your projects to. Then the type A data scientist is not somebody who is part of your organization. So you cannot leverage the knowledge that he builds over time in other areas. Whereas when you have someone inside who is a type A data scientist, the expertise that he builds over time can be leveraged, and it can be used in many other areas as well. But of course, like everything has pros and cons, right? So if you don't have such a guy in your organization, you should think about building on such a guy, and you have no options other than outsourcing till then. Support for 4.0, is it about industry 4.0, Mahendran? If yes, yeah, industry 4.0, it's going to be a mix of many things, right? Not just data science, it's also going to be powered by IoT and connectivity and data science. So yes, of course, this will be of data science is going to play a major role in industry 4.0. Another team which successfully built a data science team is Airbnb. So they focused on building a team in a very structured manner. Their interview process was very rigorous. They focused on practical questions, and they have data challenges where they gave real Airbnb data and a real question to the participants. They could take home the data and then come back with their findings, which was a real useful strategy for recruitment. So I also follow this strategy in my recruitments. This is something that always works for me. Giving a real problem that the candidate can take away to home, solve it, and then come back, rather than having a 1 hour of discussion. This helps us to understand the potential of the candidate and the value that he would add to the organization very much than a 1 hour talk that you have with the candidate. And they had multi-stage screening, like having a take-home data challenge, and then also on-site challenge where they have to come on-site and then solve on problems, and the graders were also trained. So people who were interviewing, they were also trained by experts as to what to look for, what not to look for, and so on. So this rigorous process helped them to build a high-quality data science team in a short span of time. And this is how they grew. You could see how the time that they took to grow from 7 to 55, and this should ring bells that how a startup should grow. You can see that when in 2012 they all had generalists. They had data engineers plus data scientists plus data analysts. So more or less like type A guys plus type B guys. And then in 2013 only they get a sophisticated dedicated data engineer, and 2014 they have a separate team for data engineering, and 2015 they hire type C data scientists who are specialized in NLP, CV, and so on. So you can see that the building the foundation, when you are building the foundation, you don't need type C guys. Of course, it is good to have them if you can afford in the early stages. It can help you shape up your things. But as a startup, if you have resource limitations, type C guys, you need them only when you have already proven that you can extract value from data science. Facebook employs a different strategy altogether. See, Facebook being an enterprise, it has a lot of money to spend, and it really doesn't bother about all these strategies at all. So it goes out and then hires bright minds with paying them a hefty package, and then they go through a program that helps them understand how various teams work and what they do. So they get even an opportunity to move across teams every few months to develop a broader understanding, and after a couple of years they can decide which team they want to move on and then stay there and continue their work on. So they when you have all the resources, right, when there is money is not a problem, and what you care is only about the output, Facebook strategy really works well. It also improves employees satisfaction, so they contribute in a very good way. That's one of the key reasons why many active contributions are even coming out of Facebook research in AI space. Apple started late in this game. Apple is a excellent product company, but they started a bit late in this space, so they tried to catch up by acqui-hiring. So they hired a few few startups who have already experts in the space. Say for example, Siri was acquired by Apple. Similar way, they've also acquired another company called Dato, from whom they have formed their data science team. So there are several companies which Apple has hired to mainly ramp up their data science team. So this is another strategy that one could use when money is not a constraint, but the ramp up time could be very less. You can get guys easily, quickly, but the real challenge here would be like when you hire a couple of startups and bring people from them, their culture is going to be totally different from your company's culture, and you really need to have a plan to culturally integrate these folks into your culture so that they don't end up being a separate island of their own and do things of their own, which has very much happened in case of acquisitions. Okay, we are almost coming to the conclusion. I'm summarizing the key learnings that out of this talk. So where should I focus? Now I've heard all these things, what a data science is and who a data scientist is, and how businesses have done data science in their own way. Now what should I be focusing on? So don't focus on the technology. Always focus on the functionality and what's your business need. Do you really need to use data? Do you have data? Is that data good enough? Can that be instrumented into something that's valuable? So these are the key questions that you have to ask if you want to get started with data science. And I'm summarizing the questions as well here. So that brings us to the end of this talk, and if you have any questions I can try to answer, since we also have some more time left.
Participants ask questions to the presenter.
So if not now, feel free to reach out to me over email in case of any questions. So I can drop my email here. I think it should be there in the slides. I can share the slides with you after the session, and I can add my email here. Otherwise I can also give it here. So feel free to reach out in case of any questions. I would be happy to help.
Is there any questions, participants? You can unmute yourself and ask the.
Okay, we have a couple of questions. Probably, what is the cost for introducing in our industry newsly? So the cost is again like depending upon like who you want to hire and how you want to introduce. So if you use some of the people that you already have within your organization, you can keep your costs low. That would be the best strategy that you could hope for. If you if you think that you don't have that knowledge insight, or it's not possible to have this knowledge insight, knowledge developed in-house at the moment, you could go ahead with getting a couple of interns who you could work with, and then understand how this would come up. BI tools for self-service. There are a few tools like RapidMiner, Azure ML, and AWS SageMaker, which are available in the market. RapidMiner is a market leader in this space, where you can do drag and drop and play around and then see how a particular model would be helpful to you and stuff like that. But it's all these things have limitations, in the sense you can do self-service, but you can only realize that yes, this can be valuable. How do you put into action? You need to do more work. Adoption of automated how is the adoption of automated ML tools like H2O? It's again like company dependent, I would say. H2O is a tool which kind of packs all the open source, the various kind of open source ML libraries together, and then gives you a platform in which where you can use them easily. So you will be able to use it only if you really know what you want to use. Just by having H2O, you are not going to be able to do ML or AI. You still need to know how to use it, and you can also use it in a bit of self-service mode. But still, you need some amount of expertise on how to use it, so you can leverage the best out of it. So the next question is, how is it related with Six Sigma concept? It is not directly related, I would say, but definitely you can use some of ML and AI techniques to improve the operational efficiency, which might indirectly contribute to Six Sigma. Any other questions? So I will share the PPT of this talk after the meeting. But if you are asking for a specific plan, probably like it needs a bit of more discussion, because each context is different, Mahendran. Like we have to understand what your context is, what your problem is, and what you're trying to do with your data, and what are your resources. Depending upon that only, one could come up with a plan.
Mr. Venkatesh?
Yep. We have one more
There's a
question.
question about
Yeah. For a startup, you said the founder should be trained to become a type A person. Where do we start to understand various tools available? See, today there are excellent tools available for understanding ML and AI. There are free online courses that are being run by Coursera and also even Stanford, and platforms like other platforms where they offer high quality courses for free. So a good place to start would be to taking up one of these courses, and then you need not complete all these courses, but it should still be helpful to understand the big picture. Okay, what is this? How does it work behind the scenes? Build a high level framework of what are these things and how these work. So it's like more like driving a car, learning to drive a car. You really don't have to understand how engine works and how other stuff, internals work, but you really need to know, like if you turn the steering this way, the car is going to turn. The same thing applies here. You have to develop that sort of intuition, and today a lot of resources are available, especially the massive open online courses offered by Coursera, I would say.
any other queries, participants? Mr. Venkatesh?
Yep. I think we are
Shall we
done.
wind up?
I think we are done then. Thanks for the
Okay,
opportunity, and
Uh,
please feel free to reach out in case of any further
Yeah,
questions. You have my email. Thank you, everyone.
First of all, thanks to you, Arjun, for articulating about the data science and very well know about all the data science teams and each part of it. And thanks to all the participants for the timely gathering in the webinar. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks. Very good inputs. Thanks, Venkatesh.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.